Welcome to Reach, your platform to connect with other executive assistants and acquire game-changing knowledge and perspective. Reach is designed to inspire your workday, guide you through pivotal moments in your career, and transform you into the executive assistant you've always wanted to be. Hello, Reach community. This is your host, Jessica Van. I'm the founder and CEO of Maven Recruiting Group. And let me be hopefully not the first, but let me be someone to officially commemorate and recognize you today and say, Happy Administrative Professionals Day. We salute you. In the spirit of celebration, we are going to be doing something a little bit fun and different from our typical content, which is that we're going to be hosting a Q&A episode where you, our listeners, have the opportunity to call in and ask us anything. I don't typically get the opportunity to interact directly with our audience members, and we're excited to extend that invitation to you today in honor of Administrative Professionals Day. So this is your chance to stump the experts. I'm here joined by Jillian Lopez, our VP of Accounts and Growth. Hi, Jill.
Hey, Jessica. It's great to be back.
It is great to have you back. So this is your chance to ask us literally anything. Jill's been at this for almost a decade, Jill? Nine years and growing?
Yeah.
So between the two of us, we have tackled a range of issues from salary negotiations to interviewing to how to position yourself for a promotion to how to handle conflict in the workplace to you name it. So we are ready and excited for whatever you can throw at us. You're also welcome to sprinkle in some questions about recipes. What else, Jill? What else are we capable of speaking to?
Travel. I did a lot of travel recently.
That's true. Between Jill and myself, we've got you covered on recipes, travel, and admin, all things admin. So while we wait for some of you to phone in, I wanted to start by sharing a couple of questions that some of our listeners had written in prior. So I can start with a question from Anna Marie from San Francisco, who wrote in and asked the following. Although I have 13 years of experience as an executive assistant, including supporting C-suite executives and supporting multiple people at once, I have spent the past 4 years in unrelated roles at various companies. I am now seeking a new opportunity as an EA, but I'm running into the challenge that my most recent work experience has not been in EA work. I have updated my resume so that my relevant EA experience is listed first, but this has been confusing potential employers as they read my resume and think I have not been working for the past 4 years. Is there any advice on how to best position myself and my experience so I'm not passed over? Thank you, Anna Marie. Thank you for your question.
Well, Anna Marie, my first recommendation is it sounds like you've been tweaking your resume to the best of your ability, but I also just want to give you some honest insight into what's happening into the market these days. So right now it's a client market, so you're going to have to apply 4 times the amount of effort to be able to position yourself back into an executive assistant role. You sound like a wonderful candidate for our temporary division. You may want to explore contract to hire opportunities to show employers that you are serious about recommitting yourself back into the executive assistant workforce, especially since you've pivoted away from it for over the last 4 years. And the reason why I suggest being open to contract to hire roles, if you haven't already, is because those employers are a lot more lenient around background and experience. And it's a great way to get your skills fresh and reinvigorated back into the executive assistant field. So that's my immediate suggestion, is to be a little bit more flexible with your search if you can, because it is a competitive market these days.
I think that's always important to keep in mind and to consider that it may not look exactly like what you are aspiring to, especially as you're transitioning back. There may be exactly that, a transitioning step. I don't think Anna Marie mentions what she's been doing. She mentions she's been doing unrelated roles at various companies. I'd be curious to know what those unrelated roles have been and if there's anything that could be related to the work. So I'm not sure if you've been doing, project management work or something that would involve having to collaborate cross-departmentally or cross-functionally, or having to adhere to certain project deliverables or deadlines or accountability and things like that, things that I think you could tease out some very, very relevant talking points for your resume. So I think a lot of it too is kind of in what you choose to highlight and what you give more real estate on the page. So being very selective and thoughtful about how you curate that content, and maybe underplaying certain aspects of the work and overplaying or drawing attention to the traits that could be more relevant. It very much is marketing, right? It's, you're not telling your entire story. You're telling the parts of the story that are going to best serve your desired outcome. So just being really thoughtful and curated about that, I think will go a long way. I also like, the strategy of grouping experience by relevant experience and then other experience. And so there's no gap, right? And so if an employer wants to look at your dates, they can see that you've been consistently and gainfully employed, but you're grouping it in a way so that the first thing that they're seeing is the relevant experience part of your background. And then if they choose to read on, they can see the other experience. Mm-hmm. We have a caller. Frankie from San Diego is on the line.
Hi, Jessica.
Hi, Frankie. Nice to meet you.
First-time caller, long-time listener. I had a question about how can I show up for my recruiter interview, because I feel like I've met a couple different recruiters and I kind of get lost in the shuffle. So how can I really stand out?
Great. I love that question. And thank you, by the way, for being a longtime supporter of the program. We appreciate that. Thanks for taking the time to call in. So standing out, Jill, do you want to take that?
Well, I think this is a great question. So one thing that I recommend is, what I'm hearing is you want to find ways to be memorable with your recruiting partner. And when we meet with candidates, executive assistants particularly, we know that you can do the calendaring, the travel, the meeting management, but what's really going to stand out is hearing about your stories around your proudest achievements and accomplishments and projects. The more we're able to position ourselves to be able to better advocate for you and have some meaningful stories to share with our clients, that makes it really memorable. I also personally love it when candidates save my phone number, because I tell my candidates, we're going to talk more than your husband, than your best friend. This is a partnership. So the more that you can be as openly and communicative as possible with me, that transparency creates a trusting partnership. So I would say just coming prepared, showing up as if this is a real interview, not just a recruiter interview with your agency partner, being really proud to talk about your proudest accomplishments and achievements, and also having an open dialogue with your recruiter throughout your entire search.
Yeah, I want to underscore the point about storytelling is huge, right? It's the same advice that I give to our podcast guests. In the quiet moments before we go live, I'm often telling them, hey, think of this as a conversation we're having with your best friend at a cafe, right? Be anecdotal, be vibrant, share detail, make it not generic, make it personal, be specific. And so I think, as Jill mentioned so effectively, you've got to paint a vivid picture. And when you say, you manage calendars or you plan travel, it's have you actually prepared to back up those statements with some kind of effective anecdote? So I manage calendars. Great. Are you actually giving your recruiter the detail that they need? Let me give you an example of what a typical day for my executive looks like and what a typical calendar situation looks like that I encounter. And here's how I manage it. And here's my thought process. And here's my methodology when determining the position of where to put things in terms of my executive schedule in their day. Here's the kind of checklist I go through. Here's how I matrix for my executives' time. Here's how I align to their priorities. I mean, it's really creating a detail-rich answer that's going to leave that recruiter with a sense of how you operate. So I think being really specific, it's not just a matter of planning events. It's I plan events, and let me give you an example of an event that I planned that I'm particularly proud of, that I think went off especially well. Here's some of the challenges I encountered. Here's how I problem solve for those. It's really being specific. I also think, though, that it's a huge misnomer that people, and Jill said this, she's like, prepare for this as if it's a real interview. It is a real interview. And if you think about it, employers that you meet with, they're a gateway. They're one of one, right? There's no gateway there. You talk to the head of recruiting, or you talk to a managing director at that company, they are gatekeeping one specific role at one specific company. You talk to a recruiting firm such as us, we're gateways to hundreds of clients, hundreds of opportunities. So if anything, I would treat that interaction with more gravitas and more weight than any other, because the potential for that interaction to amplify the momentum of your search is huge. So I really think it's important that you one, prepare for the interview, but that you also have a good follow-up strategy with your recruiter. And there's a balance between following up and kind of, overly following up. But I think that really treating that interaction with the respect that it warrants. Mm-hmm. So I think a lot of it is preparation. What else? We accept gift cards, flowers, massages. No. Frankie, are you still on the line?
I am, yeah.
Does that give you some things to work with, or is there something else you were looking for with that?
No, that was incredibly insightful, and I definitely have to do my homework before my next recruiter interview, so thank you.
Well, thank you. Thanks for calling. Another of our listeners had written in and asked what our top 3 tips are for asking for a raise. And I know we've done an episode or 2 on this with regard to how to position yourself effectively for a raise or a promotion. So I would definitely encourage our listeners to review some of that content, and we can certainly link to it as well. But I think there's a lot of things. I'm trying to think about the top 3 tips. I think for one, starting from a place of information, so getting your facts straight, I think is pretty important. So I do think it's important that we are reality based and we're anchored to some data before going into a conversation like that. So there's different ways of obtaining data. A lot of times recruiting firms could be a good resource for that. If they have, for instance, like a compensation guide or something like that, something that we put out annually that would give you some market relevant information to draw from. So I think it's a good thing to start with that. But I also think that in applying that information, you also have to apply it realistically to yourself. So it's one thing to look at that data, but you also have to consider, do I really fit into the demographic that they're referring to? And are you being realistic about the work that you're doing? And does it align to the categories and salaries that you're looking at in that data? So again, just being honest and reflective. So I would start from a place of knowledge and arming yourself with information. And then I think that from there, it's also about really taking inventory of what you've accomplished and being prepared to speak to some of those things. So I think going into a conversation like that with some talking points about, here's some of the ways that I've been able to, accomplish X, Y, and Z. These were some of the goals that when we first started working together, you had stated were really important to you. Here's how we've been able to actualize those things. Here's some of the feedback that I've received with regard to those goals. Here's some of the things you've said to me over the years, whatever the case may be, but really putting together your arsenal of information so that you have a solid footing and a place to launch from. Jill, what do you think? What other suggestions
Yeah.
might you have?
You hit the nail on the head with separating the feelings from the facts. You may feel like you deserve a raise, and because of the market, inflation, or because you've been with your executive for so long, or you feel like you're taking on so much work, but it is really important to be really factual. So I thought that was a great point, Jessica, to really underscore. If you work in larger organizations where there's levelings, different executive assistant levelings, I would recommend reaching out to HR and asking, hey, like, what does the process look like for salary reviews and merit increases? What are some things that my manager will be evaluating in this process? So that complements Jessica's comment around like really just positioning yourself with a lot of information to prepare for. And give your executives the benefit of the doubt. They may not know everything that you're doing, especially when you're a great, effective executive assistant. So don't be surprised if they're not aware of these things that you're already doing. So it's a really good moment to just take a piece of paper out and really write down some of your proudest achievements that you've done for your executive. I also think it's important to be really flexible and provide a range versus a fixed number. So a salary range where it's open for discussion, which leaves the employer to be able to decide between the range, but also you're happy with the number in the range. So just showing that you are flexible when you're going into these salary negotiations.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think sometimes people are unaware of how they're being evaluated because they haven't asked the questions.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something that we like to ask when we're working with a client is, how are you going to measure this individual's success? And if that hasn't been clearly defined, I think it's also a bit of a moving target to know if you're hitting the objectives or not. So I think that I would almost take a step back and say, have you actually solidified what those OKRs are, right? And do you actually know what you're being measured and held to? And I think a good starting place could be, what are your executives' priorities? Because at the end of the day, your success is benchmarked to their success. So if you're achieving them or helping them to achieve their objectives and getting them closer to whatever existence, reality, outcome, goal that they're striving for, that could be a good way of starting that dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I would really try to objectify what your efforts are in the service of, and really try to crystallize that and make them as articulate and clear as possible. I think that, just assuming that a raise is inevitable because of tenure or time, I don't think that's a strong anchor point, right? I think it's really got to be about your accomplishments and what you have helped this person to achieve. And actually, let's pause for a moment because we have John from San Francisco who's on the line. So let's take John live. Hi, John.
Hi there, Jessica. How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Beautiful day. My question for you, Jessica, is what can I do to increase my chances of being selected for an interview?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a very, very pertinent question. And I think one that a lot of people struggle with. Okay. So I think starting with kind of what we talked about a little bit earlier with Anna Marie about how to really tailor the resume and how to really tailor the content. I think it's really important to do that effectively. So to really evaluate what's in that job description, what flavorful, juicy, saison, words are there in that job description that are giving you some clues as to what's important to that employer. So I think that including those things and making your resume as content rich in terms of how it aligns to what that employer is looking for is going to help increase your chances of looking and appearing relevant for the job. So if, for instance, if you see the employer talking a lot about, scrappiness, problem solving, things of that nature, I would make sure that your resume includes that type of verbiage and that you also have content to support that. So again, I kind of go back to the whole point about marketing and positioning. I think that's a big one. Jill, what other thoughts come to mind for you?
Yeah, I'm someone that definitely looks at thousands of resumes at this point, and I love it when candidates bold achievements on the top of their experience because yes, you want to list your day-to-day responsibilities, but really you want to see like the impact and the solutions and the results that you've achieved for your company. So, like Jessica said, branding it, so bolding that section. I would also recommend don't forget about your LinkedIn. Oftentimes we are cross-referencing your resume with a LinkedIn profile. So make sure Jessica actually wrote an article about this, about, positioning yourself on LinkedIn with a professional photo. So just making sure that you have a great image online, making sure that your content on your resume is factual with your LinkedIn as well, and adding more of your flavor and your personality on LinkedIn because you have a little bit more creativity to do so. So keeping that in mind as well too is that we as recruiters are definitely cross-checking LinkedIn just to get a better sense of who you are as an individual.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's a nice segue as well, Jill. I mean, you mentioned LinkedIn, you mentioned, really being mindful of how you manage your social media image and kind of overall presence. We definitely have clients that don't move forward in meeting candidates, or perhaps they meet them, but they don't ultimately move forward with an offer because they discover something in the course of the vetting process through social media that becomes a flag, and that causes them to pause and withhold, an opportunity. So I would say be really sensitive and careful about what you choose to put out there, and just bear in mind that employers are very sensitive to those types of things and are definitely looking at that and considering that as part of your overall interview package.
Mm-hmm. I also appreciate when I see candidates proactively reach out to me and they say, "Hey, Jill, I just submitted my application for this job." And they personalize it and they do some research on me as an individual. To me, that shows that they're not just looking for any job, like they want to be a part of our company. So if you feel like your application hasn't been looked at, try reaching out to the hiring manager if it's posted online and just sending a message. As Jessica is saying throughout this conversation, and marketing yourself and taking, some success into your own hands if possible. It may not always work, but it's something that you can do to be very proactive about your search.
Yeah, that's such an excellent point. And I agree. I mean, the squeaky wheel is often the one that gets the grease. And when I get those notifications as well, and it's relevant and it's, astute and it's personalized, it definitely resonates. And I think too, John, don't assume that just because you haven't heard back, it is a reflection of a lack of interest. I would wager that more often than not, they haven't even gotten to looking at your background, right? And that's because you're literally in a sea of others. And so to Jill's point, if you can find a way to do some digging, figure out who the relevant person is, put your credentials in front of their eyes, you've got to find a way to separate yourself. I think people oftentimes internalize a lack of response as rejection. And I tell people it is not that personal, because honestly, more likely than not, they have not even seen it. If you think about some of these, you can see on LinkedIn how many applicants a job has received. Oftentimes it's in the hundreds upon hundreds. And, who's to say that they even have sufficient resources to go through those hundreds of resumes? So don't assume that there's a rejection there. If anything, I would take it as a call to try to separate yourself from the pack.
I love it. Thank you so much, Jessica, and thanks, Jill.
Good luck to you, John. Thank you.
So, Jessica, I hear that you're going to Italy to really apply your sourdough baking skills.
Sourdough baking skills, that's right. I am, Jill. I am really doubling down on this sourdough thing. And I will be spending a glorious week in, I think it's Sicily, somewhere around Sicily, where I'll be apprenticing with a renowned sourdough baker.
Wow.
And I've been preparing as of late by increasing my baking efforts. So,
Amazing.
right? I want to make sure that I have enough data around, what I could be improving, and so I can really soak in all the knowledge, and I'm pretty excited about it.
Before you get to the sourdough baking, we have Stella from New York who is calling in right now.
Hi, Stella. Welcome to our program.
Hi. I had a quick question. I've been supporting VPs for the last 6 years, and I really want to move to supporting a CEO. And I was just wondering, how do I go about kind of positioning myself to get to that next level?
I love, Stella, that you are trying to support a CEO and that is the direction that you want to move your career in. I think that is fantastic. What do you think, Jessica?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, okay, I think there's a couple of things. One is there's sort of the internal track, right, of being selected and promoted internally and creating that kind of buy-in from existing colleagues. And then there's the external track of actually duking it out with other applicants in the open market and trying to get promoted or trying to ascend to the next level as an external individual. So I think there's sort of two different thoughts around that. I will say that some of the people that we come into contact with, and I'm not going to reveal their identities, I wouldn't want to betray their confidence, but suffice it to say they work with some very name brand CEOs. And when we've asked how they ascended into those roles, a lot of times it was through building that internal kind of groundswell of support. So being the one that was eligible for promotion because they were so standout in how they conducted themselves. So you want to make sure that you're that person, right? That when those opportunities arise, whether it's for the CEO or whether it's someone in the C-suite, that you are the person who is thought of for those types of opportunities because people see you as incredibly accountable, as incredibly diligent, as an incredible professional, as an incredible contributor, low drama, all the things, right? So I think it's really important to constantly be catering your image and your leadership acumen and really showing up as the person who is going to be thought of for those opportunities when they arise. So that's kind of one thought on the internal side of it. Do you have anything to add to that one, Jill?
Yeah, absolutely. Just seeking if there are opportunities to partner or be mentored by the current CEO in your organization. I know at one point Lyft had that program for their EVPs to really seize those opportunities. So I thought that was a great point, Jessica.
Yeah. And then I think there's also kind of the start by doing mentality of, and this goes along with what you were saying, Jill, of seeking out mentorship opportunities or seeking out ways to acquire knowledge. So really, letting people know what you're aspiring to do, what your ultimate objectives are, what you want to gain or learn, how you want to contribute, putting that out there and then going and seeking opportunities where you might get the chance to flex some of those things or acquire that knowledge. So for instance, maybe you don't support the CEO, but you go to the CEO's assistant, you say, hey, I see that, every time we have board meetings, I can see how frenetic your desk is. I can see how intense it is. I see, the effort that you put in to pull these things together. Would it be valuable to you, or, would you benefit from an extra set of hands during those times? And is there a way that I could potentially shadow you and contribute my skills? So trying to find ways to get that knowledge and that information, and really considering what are the skill gaps, so what is the difference between what a executive assistant who supports at the VP level does, and one who supports at the CEO level, and really trying to assess what those knowledge gaps are, and then trying to reverse into that and say, okay, how can I plug some of these knowledge gaps? So no, you can't manufacture that experience, but what you can do is you can demonstrate that you've been chipping away at that and you've been steadily crafting yourself and to move in that direction. And I think that goes a very long way. And maybe the first time that you support a CEO, you don't start off by supporting the CEO of MasterCard, who, by the way, we had her on the program the other week. But maybe you start off by supporting the CEO of a Series A startup or a Series B startup, and where, it's a little bit more of a realistic stepping stone as you work your way up to those more prestigious seats.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And we also have plenty of resources to elevate your career in that direction, including, Stella, if you don't know, we have an e-learning and coaching program for executive assistants, and a program specifically that focuses on establishing yourself as a strategic partner, plus the numerous phenomenal episodes that we've interviewed CEOs of Airbnb, 23andMe, as Jessica pointed out, MasterCard, and Hyatt. So be sure to listen to those episodes as well, too, to get into the mindset and framework of how these EAs really carry themselves and operate.
Amazing. And you guys have individual coaching, I see, too. So that could help me with that as well.
Yes, we do. We do offer that program as well.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Stella.
Jessica, did you want to circle back on that question?
Yeah, I would. I believe the question was from Allison, and it said, or Allison asks, I don't feel like my executive includes me. How can I get my executive to view me more as a partner rather than as a subordinate?
Mm-hmm. Well, I remember from our EA luncheon that we hosted last quarter, Jessica, one of the executive assistants at the table said, if you really want these executives to treat you like one of them, you need to show up in that way. So really start by, taking an internal assessment and saying, hey, how am I showing up to these meetings? How am I dressing up and showing up to work every day? What does my team perceive of me as well, too? So I think a big part of it is just being really present, showing that you care every day through your actions. As we know, some of the best executive assistants, they truly operate as a right-hand partner and extension of them. So you really want to mirror some of the leadership styles and ways that your executive carries themselves out throughout the organization. So that could be a good start in terms of how you carry yourself.
Absolutely. I think that you have to demonstrate that you're someone who can handle having that level of access and exposure, and that if you want to be treated as someone who's relevant in those discussions, you really have to position yourself and display the types of intangibles and attributes that are so critical to being included in those types of opportunities. I'm reminded of a conversation that I had recently with Anne Hyatt. Definitely encourage our listeners to listen to that episode if they haven't already. Anne Hyatt is a phenomenon, to put it mildly. And some of the credits to her are that she supported Jeff Bezos and at Amazon when Amazon was early stage, but she supported Jeff Bezos. She supported Eric Schmidt at Google for, I want to say, 10 or so years. She also supported Marissa Mayer at Google. And one of the things that she talked about in that episode was how she really chartered her career. Nobody laid it out for her. It wasn't like it was a kind of set path. And she actually is the person who helped create the category of chief of staff that we think about now in technology. So that wasn't really a popular role. It wasn't even a role. And she actually came up with the idea and piloted the idea to Eric Schmidt in the time and said, hey, what do you think, would it be beneficial to you if I could handle X, Y, and Z for you? I see that, these and these and these things are happening for you. I see how, you're impacted in these and these and these ways. What if we did a 90-day pilot, right? And I was able to handle these types of things. And then after 90 days, we assessed if it was working and if this is something that we wanted to actually formalize and operationalize and put into practice, or hey, if it's a failure, we walk away. I don't think Anne has any failures to her name, so obviously it was a success. But the point is that she started from a place of observation and reflection. And I think that's really important, is instead of expecting others to do the work for you and say, hey, Allison, I think you should start, contributing in these and these and these ways. It's you looking at them and applying that observatory lens and saying, this is where I see friction. This is where I see points of contention for you. This is how I see people in the org are struggling. What if I could eradicate those things? And here's my proposal for doing that. I think that's how you get into the room. That's how you start earning a seat at the table. It's by initiating conversations like that are based in knowledge, in business acumen, in being an astute observer, in being able to really synthesize and digest what the priorities and needs of the organization are. I think that's the beginning of it all.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes, that was such a great takeaway from Anne's episode with the experiment. And also just getting your executives buy-in too, right? Not expecting that this should be handed to you or that you should have this because you're his executive assistant. It's, you have to work for it and gain their trust and gain their buy-in and show them that you are ready to take this on.
Yeah.
Great point, Jessica.
Absolutely. I see we have Michelle from San Francisco. Michelle, are you still with us?
Yes, I'm still here. I just want to start with saying that I love the podcast. Been listening for years, and I just find it very empowering as an executive assistant. So thank you to you both.
Thank you. Thank you for that feedback. We really appreciate hearing that.
Of course. So my question is, I've been in my current role for about 3 years, and I like it. But I'm also curious, what would you say are the biggest things an EA should look out for to know when it's time to start looking for a new job?
It's a good question. I'm going to let Jill tackle it. I can see she's thinking.
So you've been right. Jessica knows my eyes go north.
When her eyes go up.
So what I'm hearing, Michelle, is that you've been in your role for 3 years and you want to know what are the telltale signs if you feel like it's time to start looking. Sometimes in our day-to-days, we can feel like we're moving a million miles a minute and we don't take the time to just stop and reflect on not just our work, but our impact on the people that we are working with. Like, what is your work really trying to achieve for the greater good of the organization? And just taking a moment to stop and reflect a little bit about, what you're doing for the company. Some of the things that we do when we're meeting with candidates is we circle back on, is there anything else that could make me even happier? And if that's the magic question that we like to ask our candidates, because is there other opportunities that I could be seizing, like we were just speaking about, seizing internally to be able to flex my intellectual muscle a bit or being able to contribute in other ways. But unfortunately, only you know what you need in order to feel fulfilled and happy and satisfied in your job. No one else can answer that for you. So I would just recommend taking a moment to reflect on your work and what you're doing and who you're supporting. That would probably be a good way to start. What do you think, Jessica?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a very subjective question. And so, what I think about is everyone's kind of priorities and the way that they stack rank those things for themselves are different, right? So Michelle, you might be somebody that's craving, knowledge, and maybe you're kind of constantly in pursuit of new ways to learn and new challenges to expose yourself to and new things to solve and new experiences to amass, right? So maybe you're of that mindset. Somebody else might feel really great about knowing, hey, this is what I do. This is what's expected of me. I know that I'm successful in this way. I know how to provide value. I know that what I do is working for the people that I do it for. It's consistent, it's predictable, it's stable, and they're good with that, right? So people's systems or payoffs or rewards could be really, really different. So I think it really does start with some introspecting and thinking about, well, what do you need? And if your thirst and desire is to acquire more knowledge, then I think you ask yourself, am I still learning, right? Are there still things I can continue to do here? Have I fulfilled and accomplished everything that I can potentially accomplish here, if that's your goal, right? So if you're after, I don't know. I mean, there's so many things. So I would start with that. I would start with deciding what's important to you. And I would also evaluate how movement looks on your resume overall. From what you're saying, Michelle, 3 years is a good amount of time. That's not something to turn your nose up at. That's a good amount of time. But I think that people who are constantly kind of looking for greener pastures, and their resume reflects that because they're constantly in, changing jobs, I would be careful about that. So I think that you kind of have to put it all into perspective and look at the big picture of what's the story that you're telling through the choices and movement on your resume, and also what's the story that you're telling in terms of how each role has helped fulfill your path in some way.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I hope that answered your question.
Yes, it definitely helps a lot. Appreciate it.
How about this one, Jill? Amy from Santa Rosa would like to know, what are your recommendations for growing into an admin role after being a receptionist for 2 years? And also, how do you get chickens to lay the most eggs? Oh my gosh.
I'm going to have to let you tackle that one, Jessica. I have no experience with chickens, but you, I know, have had some successful experience with chickens.
That's hilarious.
Well, I'll tackle the first part to that question. So you've been a receptionist for 2 years now, Amy, and you really want to take the next step to become an admin assistant. I would say in your current job right now, similar advice as to what we shared earlier. If there are a team of EAs or admins that are currently on your team, ask to be able to step up and help out in meaningful ways. Some ways that I know executive assistants can have friction and bottleneck on their work desk is with expense reports. So if there are ways that you can help out with expense reports, help out with backup travel, seeing the EAs in your current on your current team, as mentors to be able to teach you some of the fundamental EA skills. We also know that some companies out there, some of the well-known private equity firms, they offer EA floater roles. And so it's similar where you're learning from all different styles of executive assistance and helping out with some of the core tasks, travel, calendar, expenses, and backup in that capacity. So I would look internally in your organization first to see if there are any helping hands that you can support with. It could also be someone going on a maternity leave or going on vacation. Use that as an opportunity to really step up and gain some of those experience internally with your company.
Absolutely. This question reminds me of a guest that we had on our program. Jill, I know you know her, Katie Thomas.
Oh, yes.
And Katie talked about her career ascension from receptionist to, she's currently an executive assistant, an EVP at Uber. And I think if I had to summarize what Katie did really well in making that leap, is she made herself what I talked about earlier, like be the one, right? Be the one that is on the tip of everyone's tongue, be the one that's constantly impressing people, be the one that's going above and beyond so that when those opportunities arise, it's you that they think of. And I think Katie is someone whose story really demonstrates that. She was just radiated in her role as receptionist, so much so that she got noticed and was actually recruited by someone that came into the office and saw how she behaved and how she conducted herself. So I think that really showing up with a lot of integrity, a lot of gratitude, professionalism, just treating those moments as an opportunity to stand out, whatever it might be, is really, really important. And I think the same goes for our other caller that wanted to be, go from supporting VPs to CEOs or whatever leap you're looking to make. It's, just demonstrating that you're worthy of that next step. It's a really good starting point.
Now, the biggest question of them all, Jessica, how do you get chickens to lay the most eggs? What is the secret?
So for those that don't know, I in addition to my sourdough, I also raise chickens. So I'm a real homesteader around here. I don't know that I have the answer to that. I don't know that my chickens lay that many eggs. I think honestly, it's seasonality for the most part. Like when they're cold, I feel like their production really, really declines. And then when it's spring, like it is right now, or the weather is warm and it's turning, I feel like I'm doing the exact same thing and I'm getting a lot more production. So yeah.
Are you noticing a difference in the production, moving your chickens from San Francisco down to Arizona?
Not necessarily. I would say it's kind of consistent, but yeah, we do have more consistently warmer months here, so that might make a difference ultimately.
I'm sure they're happier in Arizona.
Everybody likes a little vitamin D, including chickens. So in honor of Administrative Professionals Day, we thought it'd be fun to do a little giveaway because who doesn't like free? So for all of those of you who called in, you will be automatically entered in to win, entered into a raffle to win a copy of recent Reach guest Anne Hyatt's book. I mentioned her in our program today. Her book is called Bet on Yourself, Recognize, Own, and Implement Breakthrough Opportunities. So we will be selecting one of our callers for that giveaway. And Jill has a second giveaway to announce.
Yes, there's more. So our second giveaway is an opportunity to win a free 75-minute discovery session with leadership coach Julia Quijano. Through the month of April, all students who purchase one of our 2 e-courses will automatically be entered to win. This is a very unique opportunity to ask her anything and get a sneak peek into our individual coaching program. So there's still time to purchase one of our e-courses on establishing yourself as a strategic partner or becoming a chief of staff at www.mavenrec.com/courses. The winner will be announced on May 1st.
And for all of our callers today who were asking things like, how do I position myself? How do I, ensure that I'm the one that is selected for promotion, or what skill gaps can I solve for, and how do I acquire that knowledge? Julia is not only our coaching partner and co-creator of all of our e-learning content, but she herself has had a phenomenal career prior as an executive assistant, as an investor, as a chief of staff. So she's literally sat in these seats, worn these hats, and really knows the ins and outs of how to steer your career in the most effective way possible, and also how to really help you understand your strengths and your weaknesses. So a discovery call with her is an amazing opportunity to really kickstart the process of investing in yourself and investing in your future.
And she's done some phenomenal work as executive assistant to CEO of Under Armour. She's worked with clients like Instacart and Gilead. So her work just speaks volumes for the impact that she does for her clients and our community.
Absolutely.
So, drum roll, please, for that book, because I want that book from Anne Hyatt. I could listen to that podcast over and over again. So, shall we select the lucky winner, Jessica?
And the lucky winner of today's raffle, thank you again to all of our callers, is going to be, I've been frantically jotting down names here, so give me a second. I've got scraps of paper and names. Okay, the lucky winner of our first raffle is going to be Stella. Stella, who called us from New York. Stella, we will be getting in touch with you to figure out how to get this book to you, but get ready to bet on yourself. Thank you so much for your participation today.
Well, thank you so much, everyone, for calling in.
Yeah, thank you to all of our callers. Thank you to all of our listeners. Thank you to all of our subscribers and supporters who have been with us from the beginning, as well as those who've just discovered us. But thank you for all the support that you've shown for our program. We are 300,000 listeners strong at this point, a couple of years into this. And I hope that we've been able to provide some value to this community, to provide some encouragement, some reasons to smile and to feel validated and seen. And on this Administrative Professionals Day, we hope that you know that your work is really important. And we hear about it all the time. We hear it from executives who maybe if they say it to you, maybe they don't say it to you, but there's a reason why the demand for your work and your role is so consistent and present. It's because you fill a really important niche, and the work that you do makes a huge difference. So thank you for doing what you do, and we support you.
Reach is brought to you by Maven Recruiting Group, who specializes in placing executive assistants and support staff to the Bay Area's most prominent executives and companies. If you've enjoyed being part of our podcast community and are interested in becoming part of our candidate community, we're currently hiring for roles in San Francisco, Silicon Valley, and Los Angeles. You can visit us at www.mavenrec.com to see some of the roles we're currently working on and to submit your resume.